Hey, did you ever meet someone and become immediately impressed? Say to yourself, this is a person who is going somewhere. Well, our next guest is not only going somewhere, she's already been somewhere. My name is Vin Dacquino, and our next guest is none other than Mirna Santiago. Mirna, what a pleasure to have you.
Great to be
Let's
here.
talk writing.
Absolutely.
You are an amazing person.
Thank you.
You have all kinds of accomplishments. One of them is a show right here on Comcast. I am impressed. I'm impressed with what you've done, and I'm impressed with the fact that you are a writer on top of everything else that you do. So please tell me, who are you? Give me a little idea of your background. Who is Mirna?
Well, right now I'm a lawyer. That's, basically what pays the mortgage. But I also write. I write for the American Bar Association. I write for the New York State Bar Association. And of course, I'm here to talk a little bit about this novel that I've written as well. But, before that, I was born in Honduras, Central America. I was raised in the South Bronx in the projects.
You came here very young, right?
I came here when I was 6.
Wow.
And I was raised in the South Bronx, went to school at NYU, became a lawyer, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah. So you are a lawyer, and you didn't mention this, but you should.
Yeah.
You have distinctions. You've gotten some honors. Tell me a little bit about that, too.
Well, I've gotten several honors from the New York State Bar Association, one for my diversity work. I am on the executive committee of the New York State Bar Association for the Torts Insurance and Compensation Law section. I also have gotten a Young Lawyers Award for work on the insurance committee and that sort of thing. I mean, I do a lot of writing for the bar. I do a lot of work for them. I'm also on the committee for diversity and inclusion. So, I mean, that's really sort of the sort of thing that I enjoy.
So you do writing in all the spare time you have left from all those things. I don't know how you do it, but you do it.
I do.
So law is a career.
Yes.
But writing is a passion.
Absolutely.
Tell me about this passion, because this is nonfiction, right?
It's fiction. It's a novel.
Yeah, a novel. So wow. And I mean, that to me is good stuff. Because a number of times people come to me and they say, I want to be a writer, but I don't know what to write about. And the answer, is a coined answer. Write what you know.
Exactly.
Write from within. Well, I'm sure you write from within. And you have all these other experiences to tie in. So you're using some of these other experiences in this novel?
Yes, I have to tell you, I never thought I would write a novel. I write for the Bar Association, and it's all legal writing. It's all a lot of research and cases and that sort of thing. And then one day, it was like I woke up in the middle of the night, like at 2 o'clock in the morning, and this idea was buzzing in my head.
I love that.
And that really became the beginning of The 5 Lives of Mimi, which is the novel that I've written. I got up immediately. I wrote the first 3 pages, and then didn't write another thing for about 2 years.
Wow.
And then another night around 3 o'clock in the morning, the ending came to me, and then, the rest
Writers
just came.
sometimes say to me, how do you know you're a writer? And I say, you're haunted. And they say, you mean ghosts? I say, no, I mean characters. Sometimes your characters, the story, haunts you. And there you are sitting doing all these law things, and in the back of your head, Mimi is alive and well, and coming to life.
Yeah.
I remember when I first got married, my mother-in-law, used to invite us over to the house, and before we go, I'd be working on the book. So I'd be sitting there, and
Yes,
the story's
your eyes
like
glaze
going,
over, yes.
and she'd look at me and go, "You're writing, aren't you?" I said, "No, I'm listening." "No, you're not. You're writing." And that's what writing
It
is.
is.
It goes on in that head,
is,
and it's
yeah.
such a wonderful feeling. And non-writers don't understand it sometimes. But it's a wonderful world that goes on in the back of your head. So tell me a little more, the 5 Lives of Mimi. Tell me a little bit about those 5 Lives of Mimi.
Okay.
Who is Mimi? How old is she? What does she do?
Yeah.
And let me guess, Some of the situations are similar.
Well, Mimi, of course, is a lawyer.
Of course.
She's an up-and-coming lawyer. She's from Honduras.
Gee, what a coincidence.
And basically what happens with Mimi is that, the story sort of starts off where Mimi says, my life started off normal enough. And then she says, well, as normal can be. And you start to hear a little bit about the background of Mimi. She comes from an abusive background. Her father is very abusive. Her mother dies when she's 18. She's taking care of these two little girls that her unwed teenage mother of a sister has had, and the kids are 3 and 1. And they knock on the door, and there's a police officer telling her that her mother has died. So what ends up happening is, I talk a little bit about the culture in Honduras and the customs after somebody dies, where you have the 9-day novena of sort of mourning, and there are things that you're not supposed to do during those 9 days. And one of those is the garifunas, and that's really what Mimi is. She's someone from the indigenous culture in Honduras who is a garifuna. They say in those 9 days following a death, whatever habit you start, you're going to keep them for the rest of your life.
Wow.
So her father, who's an alcoholic, is not supposed to drink for those 9 days, but he comes home and he's in this sort of alcoholic rage.
Oh, no.
And he starts abusing her, verbally and physically, and he threatens to kill her. And that's the first choice she has to make at that point. At that point, is she's 18 years old, she's taking care of these two kids. Now she has her father, her mother is dead, and she has to decide, well, do I stay here and take this abuse, or do I move on and do something else? And she decides to run away, and that's really the first choice she has.
Wow.
So then we see her 15 years later, and she's up and coming. She's a lawyer. She's on the partnership track. She's met this man who she thinks is her soulmate. And they get married, but then they suffer a tragedy, and I'm not going to tell you what it is.
No. Buy the book.
So they suffer a tragedy. He comes, and their marriage implodes because of this tragedy. He comes home one day, and he says, listen, I can't do this anymore. You need to sign the divorce papers. She signs the divorce papers. It's 5 o'clock. The sun is going down. She goes to bed in her luxury apartment in New York, wakes up the next day in Honduras in a grass hut, looking at her mother who died 15 years ago. And that's really where the first life, that Mimi goes into.
So here's the big question. You left Honduras at 6 years old.
Yes, I did.
Where did you get all this information? Have you been back?
I've been back to Honduras, and basically my mother is the sort of woman who won't let you forget. Growing up, my mother only spoke Garifuna, which is the language for the indigenous people. My father only spoke Spanish, and we learned English in school, so I grew up speaking 3 languages.
Wow.
So I have always had that part of my culture. It's been alive and well, and that's really where I delve into in terms of these lives of Mimi, especially that life that we jump into when she's in Honduras. And I'm talking about all of the indigenous population, what Honduras looks like. It's very descriptive. I'm talking about the customs, the people, and I really delve into it.
Yeah, so that's, that's the research end of it. What people don't realize is that writing a book is only a small part of it. There's pre-writing.
Yes.
There's rewriting, editing, revising.
Yes.
The writing part's the easy part. It's all those other things. And the pre-writing, trying to get all that into your head. So you found yourself relearning the culture.
Yes, absolutely. I found myself calling my mother several times, asking her about this. And it was really funny because when I started writing the book, it was almost inspired. I would sit there, and of course I have so many things going on. I have the Bar Association, I have work, I have a kid, and I would put him to bed at 8:30, and I would just sit at the computer and work till maybe 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And it was almost like this was just flowing through me, and I couldn't, it was just weird.
Haunting.
Yeah, exactly.
It haunts you. So that's, so you had to pull all that in together, and then you had to sew Mimi in.
Yes.
And get her in there. And you had to take all of the experiences of today, all your law experiences, to put that all in there. Then you had to create a rising action, series of incidents that lead to some kind of amazing climax. And you're not going to tell us the climax because we have to buy the book. But all of this comes together and it floats around in your head, and you have a career in the meantime, and you're trying to get all this career going, and you have a TV show on this station about opinions. Opinions. Knowing where you stand on issues. is discovering who you are. And that is what people talk about when they say you have to go inside to bring your story outside.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have some pretty strong opinions about a lot of things.
I'm very opinionated,
shows,
yeah.
yeah. Well, gee, I'm not. No. But your shows have covered some pretty important opinions. What are some of the things you've covered on some of the shows?
Well, we try to address social issues, basically. We try to talk...
Like education?
Yeah, education. We try to talk about things that other people are thinking but don't want to say.
Right.
And we try to do it in a way that's informative and entertaining. So if you watch the show, and as I'm sure you have, Adeline, my co-host, and I always have opposing views. That's just the way it is.
Yep.
And
That's a good thing.
And it's not contrived, to be quite honest. I will email Adeline or call her and I'll say, did you see that story about the prostitute in Long Island, the woman who's selling, sex out of her hot dog truck? And she'll say, well,
see that.
yeah, she'll say, good for her. She has to pay her mortgage somehow and there's nothing wrong with prostitution. I'm like, are you kidding me? And we'll just have this discussion and then we'll say, you know what, Adeline, we should have this on the opinion.
So
we'll do it that way.
partnership with opposite feelings and opinions. Sounds like a marriage.
It is.
Yeah, there you go. It is.
It is. It's a marriage of sorts, yeah.
And exploring what you do and do not believe in is what writing is all about. Once you can get in there, young writers often say to me, how do you prepare to be a writer? And I say you need to discover yourself.
Yeah, I don't think you do. You don't prepare to be a writer. I think it just kind of flows out.
Yeah,
of
and you have to find it. What you have to do, it's there. You have to find it and bring it out.
Yes.
It's nothing you have to create. It's something you have to work with, manipulate. I tell writers, you don't write a book, you work a book. So you've been working Mimi for a while. What are Mimi's strong opinions? What are some of those things that she believes in, that she holds fast to in that book?
Well, I think when I first started writing Mimi, and it was really funny that when I started writing it, I had no confidence in the story. I had no confidence in the protagonist. So what I had was I had 4 people reading it with me as I was writing.
Oh, wow.
So I had my sister. Because I wasn't sure if it was too regional, too indigenous, because, she is from Honduras and what have you, so I didn't know if it was going to translate.
That was going to be my question. Is she still in Honduras? Has she come over?
No, what happened was Mimi started off, the story starts off with her being here and being successful here, and then she sort of ends up in Honduras and she doesn't know how. So at the beginning, she's sort of like, am I dreaming? Am I having a psychotic break? What is going on with me?
So your sister was a great resource.
Yes, so my sister was this great resource, and she was kind of living through some of the experiences with me. So I thought to myself, well, you know what? I can't be a Garifuna Honduran Hispanic woman writing this book and also have another Honduran Garifuna woman reading the book. I said, it's because I don't know if there's an audience. So I got a friend of mine to read it as well.
So a Garifuna is a particular culture.
Yes.
And it's almost like a subculture.
It is.
Wow. So I love that, because what you're doing is you're introducing to the world a culture that a lot of people probably know nothing about.
Yeah.
So in that way, it makes the book so valuable.
Well, I hope other people see the value in it. And like I said, when I had these other people reading it along with me to see if it would translate, and they got it, and they were very interested in the culture. They were very interested in what Mimi had to say, what her experiences were. So I feel confident that it's a book that does translate.
Yeah, so it'll have all the customs and traditions, what they eat, how they live, what they believe in, what they won't do.
Exactly.
Such as I'm very intrigued by, was it 9 days?
9 days.
Of mourning?
It's 9 days of mourning.
And in those days of mourning, there's very strict things that they do and not do. What about the burial? Do they do like traditional wakes?
Yes, you have to do the traditional wakes, and then you have the burial, and then and it's actually the 9 days after the burial.
Oh, 9 days after the burial.
Yes,
wow,
yes.
That's different.
So it's a long time. It adds up to a long time because sometimes the burial doesn't happen until 4 or 5 days after.
Life interrupted.
Exactly, and that's what happens to her father, who sort of couldn't keep up the facade of being sober for those 14, 15 days in actuality.
That's a long time. Wow. All right, so now, When Mimi is married the first time, does she have children?
She does. And that's where the tragedy comes from. Okay, it's with the child.
Wow. So then she has to suffer that tragedy. But that's what good books are made of. They're made from the highs and lows in life. Getting knocked down.
Yes,
And picking
then
yourself
getting
up again.
back up, exactly.
Now, I'm going to go back to your career. I mean, you've had a long stretch. And I'm sure you've suffered diversity. And there was a lot of things that you had to face.
Yes.
What about back home? Is there a lot of prejudice? Is there a lot of difficulties that the people, or do they stay within their own little neighborhood?
Yeah, they do.
So that they're sort of protected by that. Not here.
No, not
so
here.
So when you came here, you had to be tough.
Yeah. You know what? It's been different, and it's really funny because that's really why I do the opinion talk show, why I do certain of the things that I do, why I'm so visible with the Bar Association, why I chose this career, because I really wanted to show other little girls like me and little boys like me.
You have a right to believe in what you believe in.
You can do this.
That's
you know,
right.
This is not something that's impossible. You don't have to be a rapper or a basketball player. You can be a lawyer. You can be a doctor. You can be someone who hosts a talk show. So, I mean, that's really part of what makes me do what I do.
Yep. So Mimi, I hope, is a very strong person who fights to be who she has to be.
Yes.
And wins.
Yes. No, it's a
wins.
it's a strong novel. It's Mimi is a positive and very strong protagonist. She starts off very unlikable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way she started off. She's very narcissistic and antagonistic because of her background, and very protected. And we see her grow through the 5 lives that she jumps into, basically, and she becomes a better person at the end.
Can we do the 5 lives without giving everything away?
Sure.
Okay, so first one is...
She's the lawyer.
Okay.
The partnership track. Then she jumps into this laborer sort of in Honduras, where she's selling coconuts and food on the street to earn a living to take care of her 2 kids. Then she jumps back into her life in New York, and she's still trying to figure out what is going on here, because I'm losing days of my life. And she realizes, okay, this is really happening. She jumps into a rocker sort of lifestyle where she's drug-addled and she's like, this is not me. Then she jumps into a life where she's an abused woman, sort of like her mother was, and she has to deal with that. Then she jumps into another life where she's a mom taking care of 3 kids with an underemployed husband.
Single mom?
She has a husband.
Remarries.
Well, this is the thing, you kind of, everything sort of gets wrapped up at the end where you see, okay, how did she jump into these lives and how did it happen?
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you just kind of have to go along with her, and you're like, okay, who is this man and why is he with her? And in that last life where she has the 3 kids, she's married to this man who's chronically underemployed. She's struggling. She's working 2-3 jobs to make ends meet, and she's kind of like, okay, how did I get here and how do I get out? And then at the end, everything sort of comes together, and you see who these people are, how Mimi got to get there, and then you also see everything sort of get tied up with her husband as well, because that's a loose end that needs to be tied up, and it's very strong.
Yeah, it does sound strong. And this is the era. This is finally. When I go and do talks on Sybil Ludington, it's one of the things I try to impress on some of the young girls there, that when I was going to school, heroes, American heroes, were Caucasian males. Period. All the books, because they're the ones who wrote it. And it took a long time to understand that heroes come in all shapes and sizes.
Yes.
Doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter what gender. Doesn't matter what color. What really matters is who you are inside. And we need to see role models with strength. And we need to show that life sometimes knocks you down.
There you go.
My hauntings book. Will you guys quit fooling around, these ghosts? Yeah, you go. Sometimes.
Well, it was very timely. It did say, when it knocks you down, there you go.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, and it's a book on hauntings. How ironic.
There you go. That's my hauntings book that got knocked down. You're right, and that's what happens. And that's what I try to do in some of my books. I try to show some of the people who have gotten a raw deal. And what happens when you get a raw deal? Do you just curdle up into a fetal position
Exactly.
and cry until you're dead? Or do you get up and fight? These are fighters. George Denny was a 17-year-old boy who was arrested, and he was hanged by the time he was 18 years old.
Wow.
And before that, he was like a homeless person. And where was the rest of the world when this kid was struggling to make it?
Yeah.
So we need characters in books that are real people, suffering through real things. Life can be cruel. Can be cruel.
Absolutely, I agree.
And just when you think everything is good, something or someone happens, and life just turns. So Mimi is the kind of character we need, and she's going to show us a culture that we don't know. Now, here's my big question for you. When in the world do you write?
Well, I sort of mentioned it before. I alluded to it. I kind of wait until my son goes to sleep. He goes to bed at 8:30, and then after I finish doing everything else, and I have to clean and do laundry and everything else. But I do sit down and I'll write for an hour or 2 hours almost every night. That's sort of
that's good.
my
So this
my
is
me
like
time.
after 8 o'clock?
Yes.
It's when the phone is not as likely to ring.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you sit and you write. Now, are you know, there's so many different types of writers. Some say, oh, I write between 8:30 and 9:30. I do 1,427 words a night. Are you that?
No, I'm not. I do have a touch of OCD, I think, though, because if inspiration strikes me, no matter what time it is, I'll get up and deal with it because I don't want to lose it. So if it's at 2 o'clock in the morning, like I got the initial idea from Mimi, I'll get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'll write something, or I'll go downstairs and write on my computer. I just don't want to lose that inspiration.
Now, big question. Are you writing this book, or is Mimi writing this book?
I got to tell you, I think Mimi is writing the book. I just feel like, I kind of mentioned it before that I almost felt inspired. It was like Mimi was coming through me. She wanted her story to be told.
That's how, when young writers come to me, or new writers, and they say, how do you know? I said, listen, the book will write itself.
It does.
And you have to do that. Get out of the way. Let the character breathe.
Yes.
You need a three-dimensional character. Now, I know that when I have Jimmy James for my Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye, you could ask me any question you want about Jimmy James, and I can answer it. Would he do this? Would he do that? I can answer it because he's real to me. And that's what Mimi has to be for you. If she breathes, you could sit there, and I know that there's times when I write and I go, whoa.
Yes,
I'm reading it for the first time myself. I'm going, yeah, Jimmy. And did you have those revelation moments with Mimi?
Yeah, it was me writing it and these 4 other people reading it, and we were sort of shocked at what Mimi to me was unlikable. I did not like her at the beginning. I was like, I hate this woman. Like, why would anybody want to marry her? Why would anybody want to promote her at work? Ugh. And I just kept writing and writing and writing, and she just became more and more real. She just became more and more humble. She lost the narcissistic edge, especially when she was in Honduras and having to sell coconuts and oranges, for a living to feed her kids. And when she came back here and she's struggling, she's working those 2-3 jobs like my mother did in the South Bronx to put food on our table. And I saw, the images of my mother. I saw my grandmother through her. I saw myself. I saw my sisters. And I really began to like Mimi. At the end, I was rooting for her. And I was writing, I was writing the story. But I was really rooting for her. I wanted her to get back with her husband. I wanted her to, to get the happy endings. And she did.
See, that is such a fortunate thing for you because writers, many writers, never get to that point where you become one with your character. And that when you sit down to write, it's like visiting a friend. And you can't wait to find out what that friend is up to today. And that's what it is. And if you could get into that frame of mind, it's like the fisherman. It catches the greatest fish of his life. And you could bet the next Saturday he's going to be right there at that spot again, trying to do it again. And that's what it is for writers. If you could get there, if you could reach that state of mind, it is the most wonderful place to be.
It is.
And when people say to me, how could you spend so much time writing? And I say, how could I spend so much time doing anything else? Because the real world stinks compared to that world. I have at least some control over this world.
And you can do all of the metaphysical stuff you can't do in real life. Imagine, and that was really where the idea of Mimi came from. I went home to Honduras. I lived other people's lives.
And you walked those streets and you did those things that were taken away from you at 6. And you had a chance to go back there, smell it, feel it, understand it, know it. Could it possibly be that your forefathers were bringing you back on the trip?
Who knows, man?
I'm telling you talking to the guy who did hauntings, there were so many scary things. I went with paranormals on trips to basements, cemeteries, attics, and things that I never thought could exist, existed. So here's the big question. Now with all these law cases and your career going through the ceiling, this book is going to be coming out. How long are we waiting for this?
Right now, I'm in the process of getting it out there. I'm not exactly sure what form it's going to take, but I can say, I think, with some degree of certainty within the next 6 months, it'll be done, whether I'm doing it myself or whether it's going to get picked up by a publisher, but Mimi's getting out there.
Unfortunately, you are reaching the stage that I call reality. And the reality is when you finally have to say, Mimi, I'm going to go away for a little while. I'm going to be working with some people called publishers and editors, and I'm going to try to give you life. Now, you're going to have to send her away to school. It's your child. She's going to have to be off.
My baby.
And this becomes the business end. The part I hate. Because then you're not writing anymore. What you're doing is promoting and working and trying to get this book going. Well, Amanda, we wish you luck.
Thank you so much.
I want to see Mimi. I want to read this book. Do you already have ideas for another book?
Yes, I do. Actually, I do.
Writers.
Everyone who read Mimi, I think maybe 6 or 7 people ended up reading it after it was done and have told me I need to do a sequel to Mimi. But Mimi hasn't inspired me yet. So my next book is going to be another book, not Mimi. It's not going to be sort of sci-fi romance like that one. That was very fun to write. But this one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more about relationships, again, between men and women. But we're going to stay right here. We're not going to Honduras this time.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for being here. This has been a great experience. You need to know Mimi. She already knows. You need to know her. That book is going to be eventually coming out. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. And don't forget to tune in. We have more authors coming your way. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining Let's Talk Writing.